call our meeting to order tonight. Renata, if you could do the roll call, please.
Dugan,
Right here.
Wood,
Here.
English,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Evans, here, McEvers.
Here. Let's rise for the invocation. We have Pastor Stuart Bryan with Trinity Church with us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the honor of being here. Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting Father, you revealed your gracious law through Moses and your gracious salvation through your Son, Jesus the Christ. We bless you for the fullness of this revelation and for the good fruit that it has borne in our land in particular. Our first president, George Washington, once asked, "Where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of religious obligation desert the oaths which are the instruments of investigation in the courts of justice?" He knew that no society may prosper apart from fear of your name. And so we come before you, we pray for our republic, the United States of America, for our state, the great state of Idaho, for our city, this beautiful city of Coeur d'Alene. Make us a commonwealth of peace and of justice. Make clear to us your moral law. Enable us to be a people faithful unto it through your Son, Jesus. Specifically, I ask that you grant wisdom to this, our city council and our mayor, that these men and women would serve this community diligently, faithfully, righteously, and in the fear of your name. All this I ask through Jesus Christ, King of kings and Lord of lords. Amen.
Amen. Woody, if you'd lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any amendments to the agenda tonight. We do have a couple of presentations. Our first presentation is an update on alcohol violations, and Chief White is here for a presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Well, I didn't know the police had a bar.
That's what I'm here to ask for tonight. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have Captain Doty on Zoom, who has been asked to give just a couple of comments after I finish my presentation. So if you don't mind, I'll go through just a little bit of information for you, and then we'll turn it over to Captain Doty to provide his information. What I've asked to do is basically provide an overview of some of the issues that we are seeing in the downtown area, specifically relating to the bar district. As a bit of an overview, some of the issues that we're seeing, they include overservice of alcohol, fights, damage to property, as it states up there, assault, violent crimes such as rapes, assaults, and shootings.
This meeting is being
And the problems of
recorded.
largely surrounding 4 bars, and those are Mix, Moose, Iron Horse, and the Beacon. Problems usually start right around 10 p.m. and go until about 3 a.m. on most Fridays and Saturdays. And we've been partnering over the past, several months with other law enforcement agencies to address some of these issues. Some of the biggest things that we are seeing, I'll go through those here in a moment, but really what I want to impress upon you is the level of alcohol intoxication and the crimes that result from some of that, as well as some of the influx we're seeing from Spokane in terms of the gang members that are coming into our community, some of the drug sales that comes along with it, and then I'll go over kind of our plan and how we're hoping to address this. We've had 63 reports of overservice that we've sent to Alcohol and Beverage Control over at ISP as of last week. As you recall, back on February 6th, I sent some information to you all, and for those who aren't privy to that information, I figure I'd go over it real quick. We had 35 officers working the weekend of January 29th and 30th, and that resulted in 15 DUI arrests, 8 various drug charge arrests, 4 injury to child cases. Those are basically where someone was driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs with a child in the car. 4 underage consumption charges, 1 trespassing and carrying a concealed weapon while intoxicated, 1 obstructing charge, and 5 overservice of liquor reports that were written and sent to ABC. And we also had a ton of fights. Here in a little bit, I'll go over a little bit more detail of what we're seeing, but we also have a video, a short video that I'll show you. And in one of them, you can actually hear one of our officers saying, this is the third fight we've responded to in 30 minutes. And I'll go over a little bit more of the disclaimer before I show that video in a minute, but there's a whole bunch of video that I can't show you because the individuals who are shown in that video have not gone through the criminal court process yet, and so it'd be inappropriate. So even though what I'm going to show you is, I think, fairly provocative, I don't think really does a great job of capturing all the issues that we're seeing down there each night. We had our crime analysis unit put together some statistics for you. They wanted me to give just a short disclaimer before I do that. And some of the big parts of this is that the data included in the following page is really from only 4 establishments. And it's sometimes very difficult for us to obtain information about where someone was drinking if they were contacted outside the bar. So we find someone who's involved in some sort of altercation or some sort of a crime that has occurred outside one of the bars, or we're unable to establish what bar they were in. Those are not included in the numbers that you're about to see. This slide shows the activity directly related to the 4 locations listed. This is in this year, in 2021 through February 9th. It does not include the data over this last weekend. This last weekend was a little bit slower than previous weekends, probably by about 30 or 40%, largely due to the weather. When it's 2 degrees outside, people don't want to stand in a line of 40 or 50 people outside a mix waiting to get in. So this weekend was significantly different. Excluding this weekend's data, this information is largely, as it shows up there, from about 6 weekends or 12 days of calls. What the slide shows is 122 incidents over 12 days. Remember, these are just the incidents that we can directly relate to one of these 4 bars. For reference, yesterday, all day long, all shifts combined, we handled 99 calls. Not included in this slide was our activity from the past weekend, like I said, where we had additional 14 arrests, even though the weather was less than ideal. The next few slides that I have here are just a snapshot of what our crime analysis unit puts together for our officers to give us a better understanding of what's occurring downtown. Now, I just put this up here as kind of an illustration of some of the things that we're seeing, and I highlighted a couple parts that I want to talk about. I didn't expect you or really anybody else in the audience to go through and read all this information, but there's, for instance, the one that's highlighted down there. We have a gang member who was in an altercation and indicated to us that if he was going to go to jail, then he had to be dealt with differently because of his gang ties. This next slide has a few more select incidents. This one involves a sexual battery call. A few more incidents involving firearms. More firearms or aggravated battery calls. One of the things that we've seen in the downtown district is over the past year, we have had a total of 16 sexual-related crimes that are directly associated with one of these 4 bars. 16 in the past year. This is a call of another, at the bottom there, another gang member that we had to deal with one night, and so on. Before we go on to this next slide here, we have a video that I'd like to show you. And like I said before, it's important for me to emphasize that this really doesn't paint a good picture of what we're dealing with, because a lot of the more provocative incidents, it would be inappropriate for me to show you at this juncture because they have not been adjudicated through the courts, right? It wouldn't be appropriate for me to start showing these things in public prior to them having their day in court to determine whether or not they're actually guilty of what the video might show. So we have a short 4-minute video. Jeff, if you can play that for us.
Oh, the phone number's on the bottom.
What you gonna do?
What's that?
What you gonna do?
I'm just gonna identify you and then field you that you're not cooperating with us.
You came here being here, dog.
What's that?
You came here being here.
Yeah, I can be in here.
Oh, yeah, right.
There's your ID back.
Thanks.
See you later.
Beat it. Beat it.
Walk away.
No, I won't walk it.
Watch out, they spilled your drink behind you.
Just go. Just go.
There goes
Just go.
somebody else.
Go.
who has
Just
one.
go.
I've had one shot and one drink tonight.
How does it feel?
Just go. Hey, Bill, it's time to go. It's time to get your buddy
How
out
does
of
it
here. Let's
feel
go.
to put
Now,
that
let's
suit
go.
on?
Hey,
I bet you look in the mirror and think
let's
you
take
look
him
good.
down. He's going to take him.
Sorry, guys.
You want to lean up against the wall so you don't fall over, brother?
Absolutely.
Right, perfect. All right. There you go.
Oh.
Do you want two or just the one?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys. Good.
Beacon?
No. What?
Was there a fight or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Just want to make sure, man. Make sure you're cool.
I think I caught his nose trying to catch him.
Oh, I got you. All right.
Well,
You're going to jail.
Where's the other guy?
You're just detained for right now.
Hey, where's the other one? Right there.
Celebrating my son's 21st birthday. No, he literally just came in and grabbed my son by his neck for no reason.
The bouncer?
Are you freaking kidding me? No, it is not. It is not. Josh is not.
They're arresting him. They're not arresting him, they're detaining him. Okay.
No, it's fine. They're gonna let him go. Like, oh my God, what the hell was that about? Holy no, because Jason, Jason was
that?
that bell.
I think so.
Alright, so,
Oh my God, that movie.
guy that you guys just saw, that guy right there, came at me after one of his buddies, and the guy in the camo started trying to choke each other up against the bar.
Hey, guys, come here. Hey, man, come here real quick. Hey, come here, man. Hey, no. You know what you do? You got to come identify yourself and just fight in the bar. So chill out. Chill out.
I got hit in the bar.
Okay, okay, then tell me. Right?
I don't know.
No, this is like the third fight we've had in 30 minutes.
I'm standing here. I don't got to do with that, so I'm good. I appreciate you guys, officer.
No,
I'm fine.
hey, no, we're already here.
Okay, well, I'm fine. I have nothing to do with
Okay,
that.
all right,
I
fair
don't
enough.
want
Let me see your ID. Let me see.
I don't want that information.
You have.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do. We're investigating the crime.
No, that's
Here and civil. You just spit on the sidewalk. That's a
That's
crime,
not
too.
a crime.
It is, actually. It's a
Okay,
city
well, no,
ordinance.
I apologize.
Okay.
What do you need my ID for?
Because we're investigating
Okay,
the crime.
but
There
I'm
was
not being
just a...
detained or arrested.
Yes, you're being detained.
Well, I'm not being arrested, right?
No, no,
But then I'm able to leave, right?
no. So we need your ID.
Okay, you know this is scary. That's crazy. Chilling at the bar, female. Yeah.
He was sitting in the car and they came over and flashed their flashlight. He was like, what are you doing? And now they're doing the most. I know it. The whole time.
Thanks, Jeff. So we often get asked, who are the offenders that we're dealing with downtown? We took a sampling of 100 reports over the past year, and what we found was roughly half of them are from Idaho, with the majority of those people living in Kootenai County. Roughly 50% of them are from, obviously, outside of Idaho, with the majority of those coming from Spokane. We do see a major change in the activity downtown after about 11 o'clock. The license plates are probably an even mix between Kootenai County plates and Washington plates. So what's our plan to address this? We've made some deployment changes. We are going to continue, obviously, to work with the downtown bars to reduce criminal activity. I think it's worth noting that we had met with the downtown bars several times over the past year in relation to COVID and other issues that we've been seeing. So we met with them probably, I have to defer to Brady on this, but I know at least twice over the past 2 months, and I want to say a couple times in the fall. And then, of course, we do it every year in the spring and beginning of the summer. So we'd like to continue to work with them. We're obviously working with the Downtown Association as well. We will continue to have 4 to 6 extra officers working Friday and Saturday nights on overtime. This is causing a significant drain on our staff. There's not a lot of people that want to work from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. on a cold winter night to deal with a bunch of drunks. So, and especially those people who might have to come back to work the next morning at 6 a.m. So finding officers to want to come in on overtime to fill these shifts is a little bit problematic for us. So having 6 officers on overtime might be problematic. And there's been some nights when we can fill it up with 4 and some nights when we obviously cannot. Our community action team, this has been their primary purpose over the past little while, which means that they are not dealing with other projects that come up in the city. So it's having a drain on resources in that regard. Additionally, our traffic unit has been almost entirely redeployed. So where we would typically, say the day shift officers, they would go to areas where we experience traffic collisions in the morning commutes and maybe doing some increased patrol in those areas, or maybe school zone enforcements in the morning to try to keep our kids safe when they're walking to school and things like that. We've asked them to redeploy on Fridays and Saturday nights to deal with the DUI issues because they have been extremely significant. Additionally, our schedules for our officers that typically come in at 10 a.m. have been pushed back so we can have some extra staffing to deal with the bar issues from 11 p.m. to about 3 a.m. That also results in reduced staffing and day shift. What that means is some people, when they call for police services, might have a bit of a delay in order for us to respond, simply because we have to shift the manpower to deal with this other issue. Obviously, we'll continue to work with other law enforcement partners and our folks at City Hall to help address these issues. So some of the challenges that we're seeing, the continued shutdown in Washington is obviously contributing to some of the activity we're seeing here. Washington just went to phase 2, which means that they can open at 25% capacity. However, they still have to close at 11 p.m. And any establishment that does not serve food, so just the nightclubs and that sort of thing, they are still not allowed to open, which means those people are still coming here. We are extremely concerned that the next big event is just around the corner. And by that, I mean a murder, a shooting, a stabbing, a really provocative rape or something like that is, with what we're seeing downtown, is a very real concern for us. And frankly, we've already seen some evidence of that. We had one individual just this last fall that was charged with 8 counts of attempted murder. Our staffing concerns I've already spoke about. Our regular staffing on our Friday and Saturday nights, if the squads are completely full, is 10 cops. All 10 of those people, in addition to the 4 to 6 officers on overtime, and the CAT team, are spending all their time on Friday and Saturday nights from about 10 a.m. to 3 a.m. downtown, which means the rest of the city is largely going without service. We're going to continue to have 4 to 6 officers on overtime to the extent we can. Remember, during the summer months, we have people on overtime every day just about throughout the summer. We have all of our SROs that are redeployed to help with the downtown issues, plus additional 4 to 6 officers working the downtown area from about 10 a.m. on, and that is enough to just barely keep up. If the bars continue at this pace, we are not quite sure what we're going to do when the weather gets even better, because that's when we start seeing even more issues. And like I said before, overtime only gets us so far. It's kind of hard to fill the shifts when People are, having to come in the middle of the night to deal with drunks and that sort of thing. Unless there's any questions for me before we ask ISP Captain Doty to speak, I'd turn the time over to him. Is that appropriate, Mr. Mayor?
Maybe Chief at the end, I'm sure council probably has questions, so at
Yes.
the end, after we hear from the gentleman from ISP, we'll have you come up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Captain, you're up.
All right, great. Well, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I appreciate it. And I'll just give you kind of the 10,000-foot view of what ISP does and what the cities and their authority is to do and how we can help out, hopefully, with the issues you have there. First of all, our authority comes from the Idaho Constitution. It's in Article 3, Section 24. And basically, it just says the first concern of all good government is the virtue and sobriety of the people and the purity of the home. The legislature should further all wise and well-directed efforts for the promotion of temperance and morality. It gets more specific in Article 3, Section 26, where the state of Idaho shall have full power and authority to permit, control, and regulate or prohibit the manufacture, sale, keeping for sale, and transportation for sale of intoxicating liquors for beverage purposes. One of the things to remember about Title 23, unlike other laws such as speeding where they tell you what you can't do, Title 3 tells you what you can do. So basically, alcohol is illegal in this state unless Title 23 allows it to be consumed. Idaho runs off a 3-tier system. So you have your manufacturers of the product, you have your distributors of your product, and your retailer of the product. They cannot assist each other with their businesses. And the notes, of course, may be in front of you, but it's so we can efficiently collect tax dollars, and so they have a vested interest in the community. So that you don't have big time manufacturers that don't live in our same communities or live out of state as well, running what's going on here in Idaho. The primary duty of law enforcement falls under 23-801, and actually its power is given to the sheriff's deputies as well as the city officers to do the primary enforcement of alcohol control. The cities and counties do receive money for the state to help with that assistance. And then the county prosecutor has the full authority of prosecuting violators for alcohol violations. Your authority to issue licenses comes under 23-1042 and 23-933B, as well as sanctioning those licenses. A couple of city options are you can do administrative violations just like I do. So when we receive a report from Coeur d'Alene and we can put the case together, we send out an administrative violation and they're given the option to do a hearing or just pay or take the suspension on the violation sent. They can request a hearing with me and I preside over that hearing and listen to whatever they may want me to hear or evidence that they may have to present. The difference is it may seem personal, but the violation goes against the license, not against the person. And it's the preponderance of evidence. So just more likely than not did the violation occur. So it's still not as high as convicting someone for DUI, which I think assists us with trying to get some order when we have some problem bars in our state. Our ABC detectives, sometimes it's related that they just work underage violations, but it's really much more complex than that. They work gambling cases, over-service cases, of course, underage consumption, after-hour sales, unlocked liquor, aid to retailer, which I mentioned before, illegal liquor and hidden ownerships, community events, illegal manufacturing and importing of alcohol, and as well as we get involved with some tax evasion. We travel around the state to different districts. Your area has 2 for your entire District 1. So all of your counties up there, we have 2 detectives assigned there. We have a total of 9 in the state. Sergeant, lieutenant, and myself, and then we have 5 office staff and 1 supervisor of the office staff that process over 8,000 licenses and permits per year. And of course, there's several different licenses that can be issued. There's just your quota system licenses and specialty licenses as well. And I think we also provided some stats, but with that, I think you pretty much have an overview of what we can do. In addition to a couple other city options, I did send the chief a point system that Nampa is working on, just so that you don't have to flock shoot the entire city when you do have problem areas that are taking your calls for service. I'm sure he can provide you that information, but basically, depending on the calls of service, they assess you a point value. Once you exceed the point value, the maximum point value, then they begin to assess different penalties in regards to that. And additionally, which you probably all know, you can also govern by ordinance. But other than that, I'll just stand for any questions that you may have.
Council questions for Chief White or Captain Doty? Christie?
Well, I'll start with Captain Doty if I could. I know he's still out there. Captain, just a couple of questions on the follow-up your agency will be doing on these alcohol violations. What do you think the turnaround time is, and what's your experience with bars losing their ability to serve alcohol?
Well, the first thing we'll do is see if the violator has been charged with a crime. If they've been charged with a crime, sometimes that can be quite delayed through the court system. We don't often settle those cases until the cases are resolved with the court. However, the other violations, when someone isn't charged but the report is sent, we start the administrative violation process right away. So the detective will investigate that further because that is their specialty, and will try and obtain any information that we need for a successful violation. So it will vary, but I'm hoping within 30 days we'll get most of those processed. We do go on not a point system, but a violation system. So for each violation, once the penalty gets more severe, whether it's a fine or suspension or a combination of both, up to and including a revocation of the license. So we will go through the reports that the chief has sent. 63 reports is quite a few reports. We'll either combine some of those or make separate charging violations and hopefully take action against those as well.
Thank you. I'll wait for the others.
Oh, okay. Other questions? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Chief, what are your thoughts on a curfew?
Sure, that's entirely up to you guys. I don't know if I get to vote.
If we enacted a curfew and we basically said we're closing down the bars downtown at 11 o'clock, 10:30, something like that, do you think that would push the activity elsewhere?
I don't know if I can answer the question about whether or not it would push activity elsewhere, but we would not be seeing the same issues that we are currently. So the downtown changes dramatically after the 10 o'clock hour. The dinner crowd goes home and people show up downtown. I don't think they're largely people that have been down there all night. They're a brand new crowd. And many of them show up already intoxicated. And then they go into the bars and continue to drink, and to the point where our BAC levels are extremely high. The average just last month for our DUIs was 0.17. That's more than twice the legal limit. Now, I can't say definitively that all those are a result of people drinking at those bars, but the individuals that we're dealing with downtown, watching them leave the bars already to the point where they can't even stand. Those are some of the reports that we've sent off to ISP for the over-service. Now, back to Councilmember Wood's question just for a second, the bar for that we have to reach to get a license suspended or something like that in terms of, ABC taking action is fairly high. We have to show the person was drinking at that location and only at that location. As a result of the behavior there, they, were overserved or something of that nature. We can do that through a variety of methods, but it's not just because someone comes from a bar and they're inebriated automatically will they result in a suspension of their license or something like that. I guess more directly to your question, it would have a dramatic effect on how our officers are deployed in terms of not redistributing some of our resources. If we were to have some sort of a curfew after 11 o'clock or close the bars down, I guess, after 11 o'clock, we would definitely not see the Spokane gang influence that we are seeing currently in the bar areas. I can't say that we wouldn't have the same sort of thing in the parks over the summer, because we were starting to experience some of that this last summer, but it would certainly have an effect downtown.
Thank you.
We'll go Kiki, and then we'll come back to you. Go ahead, Kiki.
I have two for you, Chief White. Do you have data as to the number, it seems like a lot, between the first of the year and now, It's a dramatic number in 12 days. Do you have any data as it compares to last year or previous years?
Not in front of me. I would tell you that, at least anecdotally, it's weird how it kind of comes and goes in waves. On the nights when the weather's like tonight, if this was a Friday or Saturday, we probably would not see as significant as activity as we do on some of the other nights when the weather isn't as bad. When I was out there 2 Saturdays ago, though, it was still throwing sleet on us, and it was cold, and there was still a line of 30 to 40 people waiting to get into some of the bars. So it doesn't have a huge impact, but it does have some impact. As far as the differences from this year to last, I don't have that data right in front of me. I would tell you, though, the difference that we are seeing largely, though, is the crowd itself. Last year at this time, the crowd was, I would say, smaller, but it was also more well-behaved. We weren't having the gangsters come over here like we are currently. We don't have so there's been several instances now where we go to contact someone or make an arrest, and we are immediately surrounded by a huge crowd of individuals. Those are largely not individuals from Idaho that are engaging that behavior. We did not see that last year.
Okay. And my other question was, you said you'd met with some of the bar owners. Is there any indication from them that they are beginning to recognize a problem that's escalating? And has there been any dialogue or any conversations coming from them on how they'd like to, or not, engage in trying to help solve this problem?
Sure. Now, I have to tell you what I've been told. I haven't spoken to the bar owners personally. It's been largely the patrol lieutenants who've been talking with them, but they've said, yes, they have seen a change in the crowd over this past year. There are some bars that are, I don't know how to put this, we don't have the same problem with all the bars, because there are some bars that if they find out that a crowd is from Spokane, they will strongly encourage them to leave and go elsewhere. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying we just don't have the same sorts of problems at those establishments that we do at some of the other ones. To, I guess, directly answer your question, yeah, the bartenders and the bouncers and to a lesser extent the owners that we've spoken to have noticed a difference this year as well with the crowd.
Dan?
Well, it strikes me if there were any other kind of a situation in the city where we were faced with using a disproportionate of city resources and some of our most critical resources and expensive law enforcement. As an example, and most people, of course, don't see it because most of us, a whole lot of folks aren't downtown Coeur d'Alene from 11 to 3 a.m. or something. But, I just have to think, like if, let's say, the gas stations on Sherman and 4th Avenue just said, we don't really care about, people topping off. And if they started kind of pouring gasoline out in the street and all of a sudden we're diverting our city street staff and everything to clean that up, if we had to do that about once, we'd be saying, this is nuts. We're not going to tolerate that or allow that, and there would be ways to bring it, under control. One thing I'm thinking is right off the bat, why don't we mandate? Especially, we know. It sounds like we know exactly where the problem is. So it's not a matter of that, but it's like, okay, then at least for those situations, they've got to hire their own security force at about 3 times the level of we have, and then if they can't, because why in the world should we provide our city security for their private enterprise that is disrupting everything about downtown? So, and then if they can't do that or aren't willing, then we go to another phase. But we've got to hit, the bottom line is where they're going to feel it. But I mean, whether it's the curfews, mandated staffing, like when we have events we have other parallels. If they have an event in the park or something kind of a special, we make them have adequate security, especially if there's, some alcohol involved. We have a whole series of requirements. So again, this just from a perspective of most people not being firsthand aware, this is nuts and we can't tolerate it.
So, Chief,
Sure, I would tell you that in answer, just response to a bit of your question there, I think the bar owners are trying to do their part. They have their bouncer staff, their security staff, whatever they like to call them, largely do a good job in getting the problems out of the bars. I think some of the problem, though, is the scope of the problem that they're dealing with inside the bars. When you have that many people that intoxicated, and some of which who are showing up already intoxicated and, itching for a fight, combined with the different type of crowd that we're seeing this year as opposed to to years past. I think what I'm trying to say is the bars are trying to do their part. I think the problem has just gotten a little out of hand.
Do you think they have any responsibility for if they know that person's a problem and they get them out the front door? I mean, it's like, if they're on the sidewalk still in front of their place, I don't know. But again, there's cause and effect, and I think some obvious linkage. But
I have one more question.
Yeah, I'll come back. So Chief, I was going to say that about security is because I do know that they have security. And it's good to hear that they're doing a good job, but I see what you're talking about, is that they're hired to protect the businesses and have security for inside. If there's a problem person in there, they're getting those people out the door and out of their premise, and then it becomes your problem, right? Is that what you see what's happening? Is that, and they're not trained, they're security people, they're not trained to enforce law or detain anyone or things like that. So it's good to hear that security is doing a good job. It's bad to hear that they're just then handing them off to you to handle.
Well, I think they're trying to do the best they can. They do a good job of removing the problem behaviors when they see them. I think, as I said previously, I think the scope of the problem has just gotten too great, so there's too many problems for them to remove. We hear many reports of a security person trying to remove someone from the bar, and then all of his buddies turn on them, on the security person. I think the problem's it's grown a little bit.
Has there been some attacks on the security people? I would imagine there have been.
Yeah, occasionally we get reports of that.
Yeah. Christy. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go to Amy and then I'll come back to you, Christy.
Sure.
Just a follow-up question. You mentioned that the bar owners have been met with and they're trying to do their part and they're recognizing the change in customers. My question is, did they have any solutions to offer? I mean, 2-drink minimum. I mean, any sort of reasonable solution to address.
I have not heard any solutions like that being brought forward from them, no.
Christy.
Thank you. Well, Chief, you were careful with the video that you showed. I know that. But what I know about you and Lieutenant Reed, really, truly, some of the best tactical officers I've ever worked with. And if you're telling us this is a serious problem, I absolutely know how serious it is. So you haven't talked too much about the risk to officers. You mentioned a little bit about officers being surrounded, but I got to believe that they're taking some punches, that they're having some serious altercations coming out of these bars that they're in the middle of. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, without getting into too many details, because like I said, once again, a lot of those things haven't been adjudicated yet. There have been several instances that required officers to use force to resolve a situation.
But they themselves are being injured.
I can think of a couple.
Yeah.
I don't know if the officer's ear got, anyway, there's been a couple, yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not an action item, obviously, but it starts the conversation. And I hope that we can come up with a solution that works. I was curious, as Amy was, what the bars are doing. You've said they're doing what, they're trying. And the mayor made a good point that security is not law enforcement. They're going to get them out onto the sidewalk and then you can have them. So that only does so much for us, no matter how many security people they bring in. So I just appreciate that you brought this forward. I hope that it becomes an action item, maybe at the next meeting, and we look for steps of how to deal with it, whether it means we dial alcohol back to even 1 a.m. or 11 p.m., whatever it needs to be. I think until Washington opens up, which maybe will only be maybe in a few weeks or a month, we have to do something to protect our city. So thank you for what you've done for us.
You bet. I hope I didn't give the impression that my intent was to come here today and just throw darts at our downtown bars or the bar owners or the bar staff, because that was not it at all. I largely needed to make sure that I effectively communicated the scope of the problem that we're dealing with down there, along with the drain on resources and the impact to other services that the police department historically has been able to provide because of this issue, and also kind of shed some light on the fact that we see some bigger problems coming down the horizon. And it's different this year than it has been in years past.
Captain Doty, are you still out there?
I am.
A question for you. Is there some type of training that we can help our bar owners to get their bartenders and their staff into some training? A lot of these issues are over-service issues, but is there some training that we want to help the bar owners? I truly believe that these bar owners, they don't want these problems. Maybe we can help them with tools to educate their staff on when to identify, okay, you've had enough. And I truly believe they want to solve this problem. They want to work with us to do that, but maybe they need help, and maybe we can identify. So, Captain Doty, are you aware of any training for bar staff that we can help them with?
Absolutely. There's a free training on our website that is made specifically for Idaho and by our police officers. That's free. It's free to take the training, and you get a certificate at the end. There's also other civilian options that are required by certain cities around the state. However, only one city has a requirement that a server have to be trained and have the certificate on hand. So I do believe that's important, and I appreciate you pointing that out. You can certainly require that somehow, probably with an ordinance, that any server has to be trained in identifying those that have had too much to consume and other Title 23 violations as well. So yes, we provide it free on our website.
So, Captain, that's online training?
That's correct. We
Okay.
could set up something for you to bring in one of our instructors to have a personal training session as well, and we'd be happy to do that as well.
I think that's something that we really should explore. Maybe we look as a city to have some of the training of, if it's an online class. I mean, we can't have scheduled classes all the time because ISP is busy, but maybe we could start off with some training initially to get some of the servers and the bartenders trained, and then direct it to online. But maybe we need to look at that. I think the bar owners would be open to it, because again, I think that they want to do the right thing. I don't think they don't want the fights and the crime and that stuff. And so maybe this is a tool we can help them with. Chief?
So in previous years, prior to COVID, the ABC detective assigned to this area has put on those classes at the resort, I think annually at the beginning of every summer.
Right. Do you know how the attendance was there?
My understanding is they were very good. I did not attend the trainings because I'm not the server person, but
Because we can have people up to, is it 50 now, of how many people we can have? We can have classes up to 50. So that's something that we can follow up with, and you and Troy can maybe work on scheduling some classes and communicating with council. That might be a start. I'll go to Dan, and I'll come back to you, Christy.
Well,
Dan.
yeah, I think that's a good thing, and hearing that perhaps some other city has made it, part of their mandated process. Again, we have a parallel. Coeur d'Alene has been the real leader in childcare, and if I recall, at times, we had childcare requirements that they had to fulfill that maybe other folks didn't, but we wanted to set the standard. So again, this is something, I think that could be another just piece that would fall in with other things that, we set what our community standard is, and that would be one of our values that, we put a high value on that.
Christy, go ahead, and then I'll come back to Kiki.
Well, two real quick things. I think that's great to work on the bartender aspect of it and give them all the tools they need, but we're still dealing with that crowd that's not the normal crowd that's coming over from Washington. And you kind of politely mentioned, Chief, that some of the bars are not allowing that sort of activity, which I take that to mean that if they recognize gang activity, they're saying, move along. And so I'm curious, I'm sure you're in touch with the Spokane County Gang Task Force and all the other resources that are out there, but I would hope that they would be interested in spending some time working with us to resolve some of the same problems that they have.
The Spokane City Gang Unit was attached to us this last weekend. We identified the leader of the Gangster Disciples from Spokane that was in one of our establishments, along with a whole bunch of other documented gang members.
Wonderful, thank you, that helps. Just real quick, I wondered, I have to imagine that the fire department's had some additional calls for service through all of this too, just from fights, sick people. I don't know, Kenny, can you shout from the back? Any, just anecdotally, calls for service have increased?
Kenny.
We have, and it's very similar. I don't got that kind of weight, do I? That's a great question we have, and even as early as today, we have talked with the other fire departments, because routinely, from our run volume, the other fire departments come into town, and we've told them that you need to connect to the hip of a police officer, because we do not go into any establishment without PD anymore. And it used to be Friday and Saturday nights, not anymore. We don't go any place downtown unless we have a police officer with us.
And we only have so many police officers, right?
Correct, but
Yeah.
they're pretty good about having our backs, but still, I mean, there is a time value there as well.
Thank you, Mayor.
Kiki.
Thank you. Chief, I just had a couple things. One of my questions was fire department data. Thank you. I think we're 90 days away from the summer season hitting us, and that is not a huge amount of time. I'm wondering if there were ordinances that Captain Doty can share from throughout the state that are things that you wanted to look at to bring forward for council to consider. And I guess my final comment is I don't see that this problem's going to correct itself anytime soon. And I'd love to see some more information and some more proposals come back to council before spring.
There was another program that he alluded to in his presentation that Nampa PD and Nampa City is running, where there's a point value assigned to different types of activity that might be associated with the bar. I spoke to the lieutenant who's running that program in Nampa today prior to coming to this to this council meeting. He said it's a relatively new program. They're still kind of working out the bugs. He says it is incredibly manpower intensive to go through and read each and every report involving an alcohol violation in their city and seeing if they can directly tie it back to one of the individual establishments within their city. He's also said that, look, their council, as well as ours, already has the ability to make alterations to licenses in terms of suspensions and things of that nature. And sometimes our bar is a bit lower than the one that ABC might have. And so from his perspective, that ordinance is, it looks good on paper, and it's nice to be able to establish points to the different different types of violations. And just speaking very briefly about the stats that I showed you on one of those slides from this year through February 9th, each and every of those bars would already meet that threshold where there would be a suspension in Nampa.
And I'm not suggesting that that's the direction to go. I just think that, as I said, I don't think it's going to go away on its own. I think I appreciate you bringing it to light and being specific with these facts. And I do think, too, that these bar owners don't want to be in this position. So I really think it's time to, or past time possibly, to continue your efforts in that dialogue and coming together with a solution, and then letting council know how we can help you, whether it be by ordinance or whatever. Curfews have been batted around, a lot of different things, but I do think it's time to, put a point in place and bring it back to us for consideration. So that's my thoughts on that.
Any other questions, Christy?
I would agree with Kiki, and I guess I would ask for a time frame on that. We know that the weekends are going to keep coming, so maybe within the next couple of weeks, we could look at some plans.
Chief, would it be, I don't want to stretch it out too long, but I want to give Chief the time for himself and his staff to look through all of these ordinances and bring it back to us. If we came the second week of March, Chief, if you could look at maybe what some other states, or excuse me, what other cities have done as far as ordinance, maybe you could create what you think would be an ordinance, that we'd have a totally different ordinance. But I think that it's council's energy that they want to do something. And this situation is not sustainable. we, as a council as well, want to work with the bar owners to get their help in solving this problem. So
Sure.
would the second week in March give you enough time? That'll also give you time to work with your staff and work with Troy to get the message out to the bartenders on their education and how we can start that process as well. Would that?
Sure, we can certainly put the information out about the education. We'll try to work with ABC to get some training here as soon as they possibly can. In terms of looking at the ordinances and speaking with Captain Doty and his folks, really the only good one that they're aware of is the one out at Nampa. We already have a process in place, or at least an ordinance relating to this in the city. So I'm not sure if we need to go and recreate the wheel. We can discuss that even at the next council meeting, if that would be appropriate. We'll be ready to go.
Okay.
Great.
So Chief, you feel that we'd be ready to go at the next council meeting to
Sure.
discuss it? So,
Wait, like Kiki said, I'd really rather not push this out any further than we have to. Summer's on the way, and this is having a dramatic effect on our staffing and our personnel. The quicker we can get some of this situation solved, the better.
so we will plan on having you back in 2 weeks to give an update and your suggestions on some action that we can take.
Very well.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Chief, appreciate it. So we will move on to a proclamation for Red Cross Month. And Renata, do we have someone that has zoomed in from Red Cross?
I am double checking now. Nope, I do not see Mr. Bullard on Zoom.
So Kiki is going to read the proclamation for us tonight, and we will deliver the proclamation to Red Cross. Kiki.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So whereas March is American Red Cross Month, a special time to honor the kindness of our neighbors who aid families in need every day in Coeur d'Alene and Kootenai County, across the United States, and around the world. Their dedication touches millions of lives each year as they carry out the organization's 150-year-old mission of preventing and alleviating suffering. Whereas during the trying times of the coronavirus pandemic, people have stepped up to help others in need, whether it was responding to this year's record-breaking disasters across the country or rolling up their sleeves to give blood when our country faced a severe shortage. Whereas here in Coeur d'Alene, local families have relied on volunteers with the Greater Inland Northwest chapter of the Red Cross for comfort and hope while facing many kinds of disasters. Whereas last year, more than 24 Greater Inland Northwest chapter volunteers responded to 65 unique disaster events like home fires, wildfires, and windstorms, helping more than 220 individuals. The Red Cross team met the immediate needs of the community by providing shelter, food, hygiene items, and other basic necessities to folks in their time of need. Red Cross mental health and spiritual care teams also helped those affected by disasters process what they had just experienced and find hope in the future. Whereas this life-saving work is vital to strengthening our community's resilience, nearly 200 years since the birth of American Red Cross founder Clara Barton, we dedicated the month of March to all those who continue to advance her noble legacy, and we ask others to join in their commitment to care for people in need. Now, therefore, the Honorable Mayor Steve Widmeyer of the City of Coeur d'Alene does hereby proclaim the month of March 2021 as Red Cross Month. We encourage the people of the City of Coeur d'Alene and our community to support the humanitarian mission of the Greater Inland Northwest chapter of the American Red Cross by volunteering, getting trained, or donating. In witness whereof, he has set unto here his hand and caused the Great Seal of Coeur d'Alene to be affixed this February 16th, 2021.
Thank you, Kiki. I appreciate that. I don't know if I would have made it through that thing. Now we'll move on to public comments. Anyone in the audience wish to give public comment tonight? Or anyone on Zoom, Renata, for public comment?
We have 4 participants on Zoom, and I am waiting to see if anybody wants to raise their hand for public comments. I do not see any hand waving via Zoom.
Okay, and no one in the audience wishes to give public comment? We'll move on to announcements. Is there any member of the council that has an announcement tonight? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is, the legislature is in session, and no one is safe, including city, because the legislature is actively looking at changing the property tax calculation that we pay, or that we use to set our budgets and to fund the government. And a lot of that comes from property taxes, and I am extremely unhappy with the way this is progressing. I know that property taxes are an issue. I don't like paying them. I don't think anyone does. The problem isn't us, though. The problem is the assessment. And every single year, I look at my property taxes. I do the math. I have a spreadsheet. And I got to tell you, the increase that I pay in property taxes is due to the increase in the assessment. And that when I look at the year over year, what I pay to the city and to the county and NIC and the highway district and everyone, it goes down because we have growth in the city. There's people moving here. And the current way we calculate it, the growth pays for itself. But what the legislature is doing is they're going to take that away from us. Or they're going to go ahead and limit it, clamp it down so that we can't take that new growth. Or we have to decide whether we're going to take new growth or whether we're going to take the cost of living. It's a mess. It's very frustrating for me because I know this is how the system works. It's assessments. It's a property tax shift between commercial property and individual property, private property owners. It's frustrating because one of the drivers of this is Representative Addis, who is from Coeur d'Alene. He's not talked to me about this. I don't know if he's talked to you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Tymason, or anyone in local government on how he's going to fix a problem that will directly affect us. I do not like dictators in Boise. I don't like them in Washington, D.C. I think we do an excellent job here at the city of being responsible with the taxpayer dollars. I think the county does a good job. NIC does a good job. I mean, it's very rarely that we will take anything. I don't think we've taken the 3% in years. Normally, it's 0, and I'll vote for that. And I always think there's something to cut. But for goodness sake, will the legislature please let us run the government instead of trying to dictate from Boise how things are going to go? If you're out there and you're supporting one of these property tax proposals that are coming up because you are under the impression that this will lower your tax bill, you are in for a rude surprise. Next year, your property taxes are going up because we had COVID dollars this year, which offset that property tax burden. So you're going to see a jump next year. And if your assessment goes up, which it will, you're going to see another increase in your property taxes. It's going to have nothing to do with us. So no matter how they monkey with it, it's not going to affect it. What it is going to affect is the services, the parks, police, fire, all the stuff we pay for, streets, is going to be affected because our budget is going to be crimped by these guys in Boise who are not even talking to us. So you may have something to add, Mr. Mayor, because I know you've been contacted. Senator Souza has contacted us, and I've told her it's assessments. I don't know. I'm sure you have something to share.
Yeah, it is assessments. We have communicated that many, many times.
Mm-hmm.
That's assessments. I could pull up example after example after example of the tax shift. And it's no knock against the commercial property tax owner, right? If the commercial property tax owner's taxes are going to go down, they're happy about that. But the process of their tax bill going down is that it's a shift over to the residential. That occurs because now all real estate in Coeur d'Alene, North Idaho is hot. It's in big demand, right? But what is in the highest demand is residential. We have a lot of people moving here. A lot of people want to be here, right? So if the residential moves at a much, much higher clip, you could have a 0% property tax increase. You could have a reassessment. Your tax bill would go up in residential property. I have not seen any tax bill yet that solves that issue. Not one. So that's the first thing that bothers me. The second thing that bothers me is that they talk about wanting to move all decisions locally. We've had to make a lot of decisions locally as far as COVID, right? They said, oh, we're not going to make decisions for you. You make your own decisions. But they want to make budget decisions for us, and they don't even know their budget. I wouldn't want to make a decision on somebody else's budget if I knew nothing about it. This property tax issue it's playing politics. No one has done enough homework to make a good decision on it. And you're right, Dan. It's, right now, there isn't a good bill out there, and I haven't seen one that's going to help the property taxpayers. It's just not there. Christie? Yes.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you and Dan have been very active, thank you for that, active in reaching out to these legislators and trying to educate them on what the true issues are. I'm not sure that, well, clearly they're not listening. What I'm curious about, though, is as a city, we can rely on the two of you, but as a city, do we have a legislative committee meeting, and are we sending letters all the time opposing some of these things, or what's working?
Troy, oh, excuse me, Amy, did you have?
I was just going to point to Troy as well.
Yeah, Troy, if you want to give us an update on that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. The Legislative Committee has been meeting. I have 2 council members that have been attending, and we have written letters. We have supplied them a video that a couple of the cities in North Idaho put together to show them the challenges, show them good cities that have been stewards of the dollars. By taking 0% property tax increase, it is straightforward a formula. You've heard it, you know what it is. And we're not getting the response that solves the problem versus the legislation that's been worked on through the interim committee to theoretically impact our property taxpayers. I mean, we'd be happy to sit down with any property taxpayer and show them the portion that comes from the city that is used for all the services that we deliver. So I think we have a topical political item that the solution is pretty straightforward. It's all about controlling that assessed valuation.
Yeah. What is AIC doing to help?
We have the lobbyist at AIC working this. We're looking at the bills in a defensive manner, looking at what the best bill is that has the least impact, unfortunately, because there isn't one written that will solve the challenge. We're playing defense to protect what we have, continue to be able to take new growth and not be limited by these other items. They talked about transparency and budget. You live it, we bring it forward to you. We can put it into whatever repository they're proposing. We do that already. It's online. And so we are not wealthy with property taxes, which is the wrong picture that we'd like to change.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I have to believe that the rest of the cities in the state are feeling the same way.
I think they are. I think they are zeroing in on a couple of cities that take 3% every year, and that's an issue, and they're trying to solve an issue that is isolated by making a law for everyone, right? And voters elect everyone. We've all run for election. There's people that have been run here. Woody, how many times have you been elected here?
Can't remember.
How many property tax budgets have you voted on? Lots of them, right? So let it up for the voters to decide how they want their property. You know, if we're doing a good job, they'll vote us in. If we're not doing a good job, they'll vote someone else in. Right? So, thank you for bringing that up, Dan.
You're welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate that. But we will keep communicating about that. So, any other council comments? So we do have some appointments, and Dan, you wanted to,
Yeah, if we could separate these out, please.
you want to separate each individual
Well,
one?
just Mr. Ingles, thank you.
Okay, so Dan would like to have John Ingalls separate from Phil Ward and Catherine Hoyer. So I have 3 recommendations for appointments. So if someone would like to make the motion the way Dan had asked to break it up, or Dan, you could make the motion if you'd like.
We'll just make a motion, I'm not, make a motion to appoint Phil Ward to the Design Review Commission and Catherine Hoyer to the CDA TV Committee.
Second.
Motion and a second on that. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to appoint John Ingalls to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion and a second to appoint John Ingalls to the Planning Commission. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Dan.
Thank you. This has been hearing lots of concerns about growth and density in the city of Coeur d'Alene, and based on comments made by Mr. Ingalls on the Planning Commission and votes, I cannot support this nomination, giving the feedback I'm giving from the public. This is not a reflection on Mr. Ingalls' capability or his dedication to the city. It's a policy decision. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on that? Kiki?
Thank you, Dan, I appreciate that discussion. Are the items that you are not willing to move Mr. Ingles forward on, items that you believe he had control outside of the statutes of the state?
No, just decisions and comments made. Growth, density, preserving historical neighborhoods. I'm getting a lot of feedback from members of the public. A lot of the discussion that I've had is regarding appeals of planning commission decisions to council. And a lot of people are unaware that there is that appeal process necessary, and that these decisions that the planning commission makes can be appealed to us, in which case we can hear the same thing. And it's feedback from the public.
Got you. And I know we've had those appeals and we've overturned some. I just am wondering if this specific commissioner you felt was doing something that wouldn't allow us to logically move him forward in the way of maybe, I'm struggling for the words here, that you believe he's going against what the public wants to have happen rather than what are his obligations in recognizing findings that are required when making decisions.
I don't understand. All I know is that I've disagreed with some of his decisions, paid attention, and he's not the only one. If other people come up from Planning Commission, I'll make the same comments. There's been a few comments made that I believe do not reflect accurately on what I see as the desire of the public, specifically with regards to density, historical neighborhoods, and preserving what we have here, a quality of life.
Okay, and I'm with you on that. I'm very much behind paying close attention to that, and as you know, I'm on a number of organizations and groups that are paying. I just didn't know if this was specific to Mr. Ingles's actions or whether it was just you would be maybe not for anyone on the current commission if you felt that those issues aren't being addressed properly. So I think I see where you're coming from.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for acceptance of the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Motion carried. We'll move on to other business. Resolution number 21-010, approval of a professional service agreement with JOB Engineers in the amount of $453,449 for the sewer collection system master plan update. We have Mike Anderson with us tonight. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to discuss with you one of the crown jewels of the city of Coeur d'Alene, our collection system, if I can figure this out. You think by now I figured out how to use Zoom, right?
That's funny how wastewater guys call that a crown. Everyone says that Tubbs Hill is a crown jewel. And we know it is, but that's a great perspective that the wastewater treatment plant is a crown jewel as well.
Well, the wastewater collection system at time of installation from 1930 whatever to today has cost the about $50 million. And if you were to have to rebuild all that, you'd probably stick another zero at the end of that.
So Tubbs Hill was a big bargain.
Yeah, exactly.
If we're going to use
Provided by Mother Nature.
If we're going to use a royal metaphor, I would prefer a throne.
Well, what I'm presenting to you today is a professional services agreement that we are seeking for that collection systems master plan with JUB. So let's get into a little bit of what that is. So that is a comprehensive plan for the sewer system that is owned by the public. And we look at three key pieces to that system: today, tomorrow, and the future. So what does that mean, really? Today is we look at today's flows. So what the meat of all of this is a model, basically. And we will model what flows are we getting today. Tomorrow includes what's in our current city, vacant lots, things like that. Where do we predict our flows going within our current boundaries? And then future would be the area of city impact. What do we predict when we're going to grow? Where's our pinch points going to be? So how does this benefit the city? In your staff report, there's a list of 10 or so bullet points that are just spelling out certain things that we get from this, from the master plan. One of those is the GIS system that the city utilizes, the department utilizes, and in the entire city, actually. If you want to build something on a vacant lot, we use this for locating that thing that nobody ever sees, that crown jewel that's worth a heck of a lot of money that nobody even ever sees. So this is what we use to keep track of it, among many things. If you'll recall, just recently, in 2018, we identified that one of our major lines that, hopefully we can see my mouse, you can. So this purple line needed to be replaced. This was a fairly original line put in I believe it was in the 1930s. And this line carries 1 million gallons of wastewater every day. That's 1 million out of about 3.5 million. So it's almost a third of the city's wastewater. And when you want to repair that, what do? Well, we identified a way of pumping it above ground along this red line, which disturbed McEwen Park in the least, hopefully. But more importantly, allowed us to repair this aging line that's critical to the city. Another item that we identify is stormwater inflows. So it costs us a lot of money to treat that wastewater, and we try to separate stormwater from the wastewater. Identified was the CBD, was a lot of stormwater getting into the wastewater system, as well as the Fort Grounds area. We had the model identified 15.7 acres of stormwater. Basically, when it hits the ground, it was somehow getting into the sewer system, either a direct pipe or a gutter system or something like that, where it was directly piped right into our system. We were able to remove about 58% of that stormwater inflow, and about 9.8 acres. Next up is, this map is probably a little bit confusing. If you were to turn your head on its side, yeah, sorry about that, engineers. The next up is we're looking at Ironwood, Kootenai Health, that area, to try to alleviate some of the stormwater and obviously save money. So you're looking at here are what the maps look like for our existing, committed, and future. And existing, like I mentioned, was what we're currently getting. Committed is what we've committed to. We've said we'll serve you. You're inside the city, we'll serve you. And future is those people that are outside, helping us make decisions. So on the master plan sewer capacity issues, what are we having? So master plan is that area of city impact when we start bringing people in. Everything in blue, we're good. When you start getting darker in color, red, you are over capacity. Blue, you can see we can fit 10 million gallons in there, no problem at all. So that's what this is used for. We'll identify areas in the future and realize, okay, if somebody wants to come in up here, we're going to need to do something about this, for example. So the benefits, as we've discussed, are that assists us in subdivision. Somebody wants to come into the city, where are we going to, what do we need to do? How are we going to put that, can we fit them? It's also used to supplement the treatment plant. So if the treatment plant has its own facility needs, and this sewer master plan helps us identify what kind of flows we're expecting and things like that. Obviously, we use it for identifying, for budget purposes and identifying capital improvement projects. For example, this was from our 2013 master plan. That's when it was last done. These are our capital improvement projects that we had. Black X's are done, so those are good. These are color-coded. Red were identified as more severe. We've got C2 is probably one that's coming up here relatively soon. Originally, these were identified as timeframes. So 0 to 5 years from 2013, we needed to get that done. But as we've discovered with the advent of more efficient appliances and shower heads and all that other stuff, we can actually fit in more people because each person is putting out less and less flow. So the timeframes have been bumped out, and what we ended up doing was just looking at the flows. Are we getting more growth over here or more growth over here? And using that, obviously, to identify what needs to get done. And C2 is going to need to get done pretty soon. What that C2 is this line flowing from a 24-inch line, which seems pretty good, and then bottlenecks down to a 12 before increasing in size again. So what this model does, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at, down below here is the grade. This is our sewer lines, and each one of these rises here is a manhole. So at master plan, the sewer flows down, okay, and it's going to start surcharging the manholes. That's not something we want. We want those lines about, depending on the line, but a main line like this, 70% full or something is about where we want to be. Certainly not 100% plus where you're filling up manholes. The green line up here, that represents the surface. So you've got a little wiggle room here, and you're going to start getting nervous when that manhole surcharges up to where that green line is, because that means there's sewer on somebody's street. So this is at master plan build out. This is not happening right now, but this is what the model suggests, and this is just to give you a visualization of the importance of the modeling, because there's no way you'd be able to figure this out without that. And this, in 2016, was $1.3 million. It's a rather expensive project. So we'll be looking to doing this in the future. It's not slated for this year. Certainly you would have known about it, but this is coming up, for example. So to update that master plan, we have 3 tasks assigned. Task 100 is the update. That literally writes the book. It's a 6-inch thick binder, and the bulk of it is projects. It's that C2 project and identifying specifically what it's going to cost and allows us to plan. Task 200 is flow monitoring. So we use that to inform the model. We use both the water department's flow meters, but also we want to measure exactly what's going down that pipe. So we'll measure an 8-inch line with X amount of homes connected to it and use that to calibrate the rest of the model. And then we did identify task 999, which is additional services. Those aren't identified yet, but we wanted to have enough money in there for additional monitoring if needed, or not. Hopefully or not. Hopefully it won't be needed. But we wanted to identify money so we could allocate it as needed. So we've budgeted this year $200,000 for this. We did know that this was going to take multiple years to accomplish this. So next year we will budget the $253,000 remaining for this project to go forward. For a timeline, once the model has all the information that's needed and all the flows are gathered and all that, and actually start calibrating, we should have a draft within 6 months. So it should be hopefully early next budget year. For a cost of $400,000 plus, wondering why perhaps we're going with JUB and we don't go out to bid. We've used JUB for the last 4 master plans. We do own the model. We, as in the city of Coeur d'Alene, owns this model. We own the data. We don't own the software. So JUB has the ability to, they own the software, first of all, so they're able to input the model data into it. But really, mostly, they have familiarity with it. So it allows them to hit the ground running, which generally, as you can imagine, means less money. So it's going to cost us much less money to use somebody who's already familiar with our system rather than try to bring somebody else up to speed who has to measure everything all over again, buy the software perhaps, and try to identify the problems. So we would recommend that you would authorize the agreement in the amount of $453,000 and change dollars. I'm here to stand for any questions that you may have.
Council questions for Mike Woody.
I love this stuff. Because I
I love
think
that you
I've
love
been
it.
here through them all. So a couple questions. So on the stormwater, I remember when it was real bad around down in the forest area and stuff, and it was going through the sewer. So that's been slowly taken away.
That's correct. Originally, if you don't mind a little history lesson, we had and have rather large pipes that are main trunk lines or interceptors running through the city, and we would use stormwater to actually keep things moving, keep things flushing down. But as the city grew, that wasn't needed, and in fact is becoming a hindrance.
Okay.
So what was originally intentionally tied together, we separated, and stormwater will either have an outfall, if you've seen some of their presentations, or some way of allowing it to percolate down into the aquifer.
But you still are unplugging stormwater from the wastewater treatment plant?
Yes.
Is that correct? So kind of relating that to the low-flow toilets, not as much water is coming into the system. Does that make any difference when you have stormwater coming in? Is the stormwater still of value to keep moving the poop, so to speak?
Yeah, no, not really. There is, quite honestly, there is a need to keep things moving, but we rather target it now, rather than just having stormwater flush everything down.
Right.
If we know we have one particular line, which does happen, if there's an 8-inch line that has 3 houses on it, and it's a quarter-mile stretch, it's not going to move much. So we'll bring a truck around and target that, and you'll see our trucks out there occasionally, and we call it our tank truck, and literally just flushes down several hundred gallons down the line and cleans it out.
The other question, when you were saying about growth, where's the growth going to be? How dense is it going to be? How many flushes is it going to be? Who pays for that? And when a developer puts a sewer pipe in and plugs into our system, is there some impact on the now and the future, and how about the past?
So growth pays for growth, as we like to say, citywide. It'll pay for it in twofold. If you had a house that was a vacant lot, or if you have a vacant lot and you want to put a house up on that, and there's already infrastructure available, you will pay what's called a cap fee. And that cap fee pays for your portion of that $50 million or whatever has yet to be paid off. It pays for the portion of that, as well as the treatment plant, not just the collection system, but also the treatment plant itself. If you didn't have infrastructure available to you, you would be required to run it what we call to and through. So we will require you to run a wastewater line as per the plan. If it says we're requiring an 8-inch line here, then we require an 8-inch line there. Run it through your property so as not to keep people, the next person down from being able to get wastewater. And then you would also pay the cap fee. So you're paying for that new infrastructure, and then the cap fee for the old infrastructure. And then it also, what generally happens is they'll donate that infrastructure to the city. So the wastewater department is then to care for it in perpetuity. There are some places that still have private sewer. If you have an apartment complex or something, that could be private sewer, and they handle the maintenance of that until it ties into the city.
Okay. After this plan is done, I look at the plan as you got 8 years out of this last one, maybe 9 by the time it's done. Would it change that much? It would seem like after you do this 4 or 5 times, I mean, there's going to be problems that you fix. Does the sewers make new problems all the time, or what changes?
So it's a lot of correcting the past. It's not like the sewer collapsed, where it goes from 24 inches down to 12 inches to 24. It's not like the sewer collapsed. It was just done that way. So those are identified problems. For the most part, many of the issues that we notice are from getting out there inspecting with cameras. That's where the pipe literally collapses, or maybe tree roots are growing into it or something like that. The master plan identifies those known problems, but it's really mainly for growth. So if we're anticipating more flow going through here, yeah, it fits now. But if the city were to all of a sudden, take in hundreds of 150 acres of dense residential could we fit it in our sewer pipe? So that's what the master plan identifies.
Okay. And then my last question is, so when you get this plan and it has all these options, do you guys choose what you want to do, or the engineer saying, this is what you should do first?
So the options are pretty minimal when it comes to, there's some wiggle room there, but the options are fairly minimal as far as, because it's just physics. You're going to need this size pipe to carry this much water. It's pretty simple because it's a gravity sewer system. The options come into play as in when we identify, okay, we're going to do this year. It's prioritization. That's really it. We're going to do this one this year or this one next year, and that's where they'll identify what's needed, and then it's up to us to come to you and say, we're really seeing this as a problem. We need to get this done now.
And the money.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Other questions? Kiki?
Just one. So once this plan is done and we're working on approving a comp plan for the future, then say council's directive in the comp plan is to maybe not encourage as much growth or accept as much growth, how do you alter this plan to move where this density is going to be, or where you thought it was going to grow at a certain rate, in order to reprioritize? Do you have to go back to the engineer to do that again? And then, so that was my first piece, and then my second piece was, how is this melding in with the comp plan so that we have a good set of base point data on how many people can our sewer support?
So the reason this is coming in a little bit later, we were anticipating getting this in fact, this money was budgeted for last year, but we wanted to wait for Envision Coeur d'Alene to really kind of get some meat on the bones and see where they were going to see growth. So we did incorporate Envision Coeur d'Alene's comp plan, the city's comp plan, into this to try to forecast for growth. But to go into a little more detail on your first question, if somebody were to have 150 acres and want to build on it and put residents on it, it's not going to happen next year. Those kind of developments take 15 years to develop, and it's why we updated this master plan in 2013. That wasn't a brand new master plan. That was an update to our current one. Previous to that was another update, and we'll update it again. It just depends on growth. We may have to do it in 5 years. Given the size of the city and how we're pushing our edges, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll be able to go much more than 5 years, but we'll update it as needed and say, okay, what happened? That's what we're going to do now. We anticipated this amount of growth in this area. What did we really get? And use that to inform the next model or the next update.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mike? If no other questions, we're looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of Resolution 21010, approving professional services with JUB Engineers Incorporated in the amount of $453,449 for the sewer collection master plan update.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
Gookin?
Aye.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Now we'll move on to resolution number 21-011, adoption of the 2021 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And we have Monty McCulley with us. Welcome, Monty.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm just trying to find where my presentation is. There it is. Thank you, Jeff. All right. So for the past 2 years, the Coeur d'Alene Parks and Rec Department has been working on updating our master plan from 2008. It's supposed to be every 10 years, but sometimes it takes a couple years. So we started this process by reaching out to the public, doing questionnaires, surveys, getting a feel for what the public wants to see in our Parks Department, in our services for recreation. And after we did that, we started writing the plan, came up with the draft, and we brought it forward. So we came to the Parks and Rec Commission last September, and they reviewed the plan, and they asked us to go back out and reach out to the public more. So we opened up our Survey Monkey for a few more months and got about 500 more responses to get a better feel for what the public wants. So the new responses didn't really vary that much from what we already had. The numbers were almost identical as far as what people wanted to see, with the exception of a couple things. We did see a lot more requests and support for pickleball facilities and for a water trail. And these have been added to the plan, and we have updated our charts for what the surveys had told us. So, since our last plan in 2008, we've accomplished quite a few things. So, we built the Landings Park in 2009. We built Sunshine Meadows. I don't know if you've ever heard of Legacy Place, but we've started on that. It's a little tiny park in the north part of Coeur d'Alene. We've changed around our disc golf courses where we've took one 9-hole disc golf course from Bluegrass. We split it up into 3 practiced disc golf places, took people from practice, and then we opened up an 18-hole disc golf course at Cherry Hill Park. We've added some play equipment at Sunset Field, and we added a small satellite skate park there that used to be in our old skate park downtown. We've repurchased Person Field, added a playground there, made some improvements to Fippany. We purchased Bryan Park. We've constructed a baseball field, the American Legion, at Ramsey Park. We've added new playgrounds at Person Field, Memorial Park, and Ramsey Park. And we now have 5 off-leash dog parks. And the first one was opened after the update from the last plan. So McEwen Field was completely rebuilt as a community park. Memorial Park has been extensively renovated. And we built a large new state-of-the-art skate park there as well. 5 acres of parkland have been added to Cherry Hill. And we've extended 4 miles of the Prairie Trail as well, which we might be seeing more in the future. We've got 29 acres from the BLM, which will be developed into a park at some point. We have a master plan for that. And, of course, we built Atlas Park. The accessible trail was built on Tubbs Hill, and the Fire Road was completed. The trail system for hiking and mountain biking was developed on Canfield, and Fernand Lake had hiking trails added to it. So a master plan has been created for Veteran Centennial that'll serve as a guide so we can get some kind of park up there at some point in the future. And we've adopted a natural open space plan for our natural areas. The urban forestry management plan was created, and it's included in this plan. We also have added a few buildings to the Parks Department to help us with maintenance. And we combined departments since then. We used to be Parks Department and Recreation Department. Now we're both. So we've had 26 miles of shared use paths have been built since that last plan, bringing the total miles of paved multi-use paths to 50 miles. And we maintain 23 of those. 43 miles of bike lanes have been added to the city streets for bike lanes, and we have a total of 64 miles there. And we saved around $200,000 doing this plan in-house ourselves.
Ooh-wah.
Yeah.
So the way we determine what we want to put in a master plan is to develop a level of service. A level of service tells us how many acres of parkland per 1,000 people, per 1,000 residents that we need to fulfill those needs. And so every city's different. They have a different standard depending on the age of your population, what your population needs or wants. And once you establish that level of service, you want to always try to keep to that. So as your city grows, your parks also need to grow. So our level of service in 2008 was about 3.0 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. We had about 41,000 people back then. Our desired level of service back then was about a 4, and that plan recommended we add more acreage to bring that up to the level we wanted.
Does that figure include Tubbs Hill?
No, it doesn't include natural open spaces. That's just active and passive use parks. There's a different formula for those. We haven't put that in this plan.
Is it required?
No. We could work on something like that if there's something you're interested in. Because those parks are managed differently. So in 2020 currently, or I guess 2021 now, we've been working on this plan for a while. Our level of service is now up to 4.7 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents, with a population of about 51,000. So we've grown about 10,000 people since then. And we've added about 40 acres of parkland since that last one. Now, according to our surveys and what we see that people need and want, we would like our level of service to be about a 5. So 2040, I know this plan is supposed to be for 10 years, and we'll update it at that point as well, but we like to project out another 10 years past that, what we think build-out will be. And at current growth, we're looking at about 85,000 people in 2040. So if we add no new parks to our city in that time, our level of service will drop down to about 2.82. So in order to serve our populace, we need to add about 185 acres of parkland over the next 20 years. And this plan addresses those needs and how to do that. So how much does it cost? So the cost to develop a community park is approximately about $475,000 per acre. They're larger parks. They have more amenities than the smaller neighborhood parks, and they're between about 10 and 40 acres for those parks. Neighborhood parks are smaller, usually less than 7 acres, and that's usually around $300,000 per acre. Now these don't include the cost of getting the land. We've been pretty good in the past about getting land donated to us through development. So public input. We went out and asked them a series of questions, and they gave us their answers. So the favorite attractions in Coeur d'Alene, natural areas and parks. Number 1, trail facilities. Number 2, waterfront. Number 3. What facilities would enhance our community? Natural areas, number 1 again. Trails, number 2 again. And we had a variety of other things. Performing arts, more leisure activities, a lot of stuff to do with docks and moorage and dog parks. And how would you rate the importance of our natural parks in Coeur d'Alene? You can see right there, really high. What 3 things should be added to the Coeur d'Alene park system? More bike lanes and trails was number 1. And then more public parks and trails near water. After that, more pickleball courts. And that came up quite a bit the second round we went out. What 3 activities would you like to see expanded? Again, more bike lanes and trails, more natural parks. And what specific area would you like to see additional natural areas? And number 1 was along the Spokane River, which I think we've done pretty well. In what specific areas do you want to see more trails and bikeways? Number 1 is everywhere. We have the Atlas Mill site, we have along the Spokane River, and we have a north-south trail on the east side of town. Actually, we have a conceptual plan for that. So Parks Department has grown so much, we now have 2 maps for our parks. So this is the northern part of Coeur d'Alene. You can see community parks, neighborhood parks, complexes, natural parks. And this is our parks to the south. And this is a map that has all of our parks plus future parks. So the big red stars are future proposed community parks. The yellow stars are neighborhood parks. And the idea here is we'd like to have a park within a half mile of each resident in the city so they can walk to it, ride bikes to it without major barriers like the freeway and Highway 95. And we put them in areas where we thought land might be available at some point. Now you can see 4 stars on there that are blue with dotted lines. those are proposed parks that actually have a plan. So up at the Trails subdivision to the northwest corner of the city, there's already parkland donated to the city for that subdivision. We have the BLM property down on the river that we already have a lease with the BLM for that. We have a trail in the middle, or a park in the middle of town. The property was donated to us from Jack Forrest. And up in the northeast corner, we have the Can Course, which is another piece of property that's privately owned right now, but working with us to make it a public mountain bike and hiking area. So as you can see, the future parks are dispersed more evenly around town in areas where we see a need. So that is the presentation. If you have any questions.
Questions for Monty? Dan?
Well, I'm going to take a risk here and go out and show my ignorance, but for some of us who may not really be tuned into it, what is a pickleball court, and who are the kind of folks that use it, since it's it's a high demand thing.
So pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the country right now. You play it on a tennis court. Well, they have their own courts now, but it's the same as the tennis court. The nets are lower, the court is smaller as far as the play area, and it's pretty active. But you're getting a wide range of people, from all the way up to people in their 70s playing it, and it's pretty fun. It's a lot, I would say it's easier to get into than tennis, and it's growing. There's a lot of associations that are raising money to build these courts and to promote them throughout the city.
Okay.
So you've never played it? So you don't know? So really, the best way to describe it, the way that the association tells it to me, is that they say that you could imagine yourself standing on a ping pong table, and that's how it's played. That's what they talk about. So the court, like Monty said, it's much smaller. The neat thing about it is that grandparents can play with grandchildren. And any age group, you can get hot and heavy, and they even have a category that on a national level, you can get scoring. You're a 5-0 player, or like I'm a 1-0 player. And so there's a local guy here who is a pro that plays nationally, and he's ranked 5th in the world. And he plays out of Hayden. And so it's played with a hard paddle. It's not a net, so it's more like a ping pong paddle. And it's played with a wiffle ball, a plastic wiffle ball. And since the net is only so high, they have an area that's lined out they call the kitchen. You're not allowed to step inside the kitchen. You've got to play back in the court. And as Monty said, it's the fastest growing sport in the nation. And so I can't tell you how often people call and ask us about how many pickleball courts. And pickleball, there's several associations and groups that get together and they play it. You should take a look at Memorial Field, there where those are at, and how busy that is. And then also take a look at the same time of the day how busy Cherry Hill is. Those are standalone courts at Memorial Field. Cherry Hill, they have to put up temporary nets, but we've lined that out for, I think there's 8 separate courts there that are lined out. And so it's a big deal. It's a real big deal. And we always ask them to participate, because they come to us and say, we need more courts. And said, okay, help me out. So we've been always in discussions about where we might have some more. They're in a fundraising mode to try and find some money. So you may see here in the next year or two us come back and talk about those partnerships with those organizations.
Well, thanks. Who knew? Okay.
When we first opened the pickleball courts at McEwen, several of us from the city hall would go out and play on a regular basis, and it got competitive.
Woody?
Just a couple questions. When we were talking about acres per population, we don't take into account that all the surrounding areas come and use our parks, right? As far as use and population.
Right, that's just for local residents.
Right.
So we're actually, especially this last year during the pandemic, we're getting quite a few more people using our parks than ever before. So that level of service will hopefully stabilize once this whole thing is over.
But it's a big part of what we make here and what our citizens pay for. Other people come and use it pretty regularly and then complain about paying $1 an hour to park, right? I use that a lot because we pay for it and, thanks for your dollar. That helps, every little bit helps. I think that's important. You can see what we do.
And that's one of the reasons why our level of service is now at 5 as opposed to 3 where it was in 2008.
I know, I love what you guys have done. I think we should get credit for trails and natural areas, though. And then that brings the number up a little better, because you are maintaining those, probably not mowing and blowing, but
that would actually lower the number, because it's more acreage for the same number of citizens. So traditionally, they don't put natural areas in there because some places like Spokane have really large natural areas with population that would skew those numbers, and they're kind of specialized areas for, Tubbs Hill you can go hike, but, McEwen you can watch concerts and bike rides, playgrounds, splash pads. And so there is a category you can use for natural areas. We just haven't done that yet.
Gotcha. Thanks for what you guys do. It's pretty cool.
Other questions for Monty? We'll go Christie, then we'll come back to Keith. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I just I've already talked with Monty, but it's my 4th time watching this, and it gets better every time, Monty. And I just am so appreciative that the Parks Department took on this project internally. Saving $200,000 is significant, really. And I don't have a lot of questions because I've seen it so much, and you've adapted as we went. Park and Rec asked a few things, and you did that. Really appreciate it. But I really wanted to highlight to council that, fact, first of all, that they did it themselves. And then I'm going to sound like a broken record. We've just saw 2 master plans, one pretty critical, we are going to have to pay an engineer to help us with it. The other, we could do it in-house. We have other entities in the city, PD, fire, streets. They probably have master plans, or they want to do master plans. I'd like to see a facilities master plan citywide. So at some point, I'd like to see on the agenda that we actually talk about maybe a small amount of money, resources, provided to Troy to help him develop a facilities master plan with a consultant, and then tie all of those plans together to a citywide strategic plan tied to a 5-year budget plan. It really can be done. It is the right thing to do, and I'd like to see us talk about it and make steps that way.
I guess that's something that we can work towards. Budget is coming up before we know it. This is already February. They'll start working on budget, and that's something that we can put in our budget to get working on for next year.
Thanks.
So, Council Wood, thank you for bringing that up, but I got to tell you, this guy, so what we do, my staff is extremely talented. I'm a really fortunate guy because they have a wide array of talents, and I lean on them all the time. We've got some folks that are really good at woodworking, and we've got some folks really good at planting flowers and just all kinds of stuff. Arborists, people that are just really, really, really talented. Building maintenance the same. Adam does a great job. Paula and her staff do a great job. But Mike Kempton and Monty carried most of this burden. I really want them to be recognized. I helped guide through the back of this, but I honestly, they're the 2 guys, and Jeff Erickson worked on this really hard. And so we're just really, really fortunate we have such talented folks that we lean on them and they come through. And, the last time we did this, we paid almost $90,000 for MIGs. So we guessed in 12 years' time, it's probably more about doubled. So kudos to Monty, really.
Go up.
Yeah.
Shucks.
Kiki.
Monty, thanks. I had a couple things. One is that when I first did the survey and I looked at this, I was confused about the number one thing that people asked for was natural parks. And then we're talking about not including any of the natural open spaces in our acreage, although I'm on board with Woody in that they somehow, it feels like, should be documented in the plan. Whether they're included in your level of service by acre or not, it seems like the natural open space parks should be documented so that we kind of as a master plan know what we have and can go back and say, if that's what people are asking for, that they want these natural open parks versus your more formal park with a playground or courts or that we have that as a council to fall back and look at. So that was one thing I was confused about, and I do think that the natural open space park should be included. And then another thing is Bill had mentioned somewhat about urban forestry being folded into the master plan, and can you touch on that real quickly, how that worked?
Sure. First, I'd like to talk about the level of service for natural open space. I see the value there, because it'll help us plan if we need more natural open space and show the value of that for the number of people we get out there. We'd probably need some accurate counts, but that's definitely something we can put in the plan. So urban forestry, they've been working on a plan for many years. And then when Nick moved up to urban forester, he took that on and completed that project. And so instead of adding it as an appendix to the master plan, we actually put it in almost as a chapter on its own that you'll see it's a different format in there, but it addresses all the needs for our street trees and how to keep those safe and healthy and the responsibilities of maintaining those as well.
Good. Thank you. And also thank you for including the water trails. You know, that's one of my, I've been on that for a while, and I'm glad to see that it's in your trails plan and your parks plan. And thank you for doing the work in-house. That's very much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to repeat what Woody and Kiki said, which is I think the natural parks are important to include in the total. Just writing off Tubbs Hill, and when you say we need 185 more acres of parkland, that's a lot. And in the report, it says that, a community park doesn't say, per acre is $475,000, which means $88 million just to get up to the LOS of 5 or whatever you want. It's a lot of money. And one of the things I'd like to run by council is that we can ask developers to put in parks. And I've done it before. The one that was up on Ramsey, I was like, and Woody, you said it too, it's like, can they just have a park in there? And I remember the argument given was, oh, well, there's a park, it's a quarter of a mile away. And I'm like, oh, come on. I mean, I think we can do a lot more when we do an annexation or we do a development to insist that there be a park, especially if you're saying that we need 185 acres. It just seems all too often we're cave into a developer so they can put in 3 more houses instead of putting in a park. I think council could be a lot more diligent in requesting those things in the future. Thank you.
Hillary stuck around long enough for me to ask her a question. So Hillary, if you can come up, and I know there's some larger projects. What is the requirement for park space? Say, because we see Coeur d'Alene Place, and they've got a fantastic park in there. And
well, it depends on if it's a planned unit development. So if it is, then it's the 10% minimum is the requirement for open space. So a lot of the projects will provide more than that, but there is a tricky thing because there's the impact fees as well. So at times, you can look at it and say if an annexation comes in, rather than having the full impact fees, we could also look at if they're dedicating parkland and building that out. So that's just something where you have to look at, is it a PUD? If it's not, then you can kind of look at some of the ways to get the open space in there.
Mm-hmm. So that's a way to pay to get the dirt for some of these parks, is just they're required to provide it. We know that sometime in the future, that land all along Hutter, that's going to be a request for annexation of that, and that would be some type of planned unit development. That they're going to have some parkland in there.
And it does help for us to be able to look at the Parks Master Plan and show where are the areas where we need parks and what type of parks, so we can show that information.
Hillary?
Yes.
Council sets the rules for the PUDs, or that's a state thing?
Well, it's in our code, so.
So if we wanted to, if council had the guts, we could say, yeah, put in a park. We could change 10% to 20%.
Certainly.
We could do that.
The code could be changed, and you could
So
also
if there was
say.
a will on council, the buck stops up here. There's a will on council, we could make it happen.
that you could certainly change the percentage. You could also change that a certain percentage has to be open to the public, because right now it's private. So
Yeah,
it's,
or it could be water.
if there's water,
I
yeah.
have a question while you're there. So I'm thinking to the landings. I remember when the landings came and they gave us some dirt. That didn't develop the park, is that correct? So they give us impact fees, but that's not enough to build the park. Is that correct?
They gave us the land.
They gave us the dirt.
And we
no impact.
found the money, and some of that was, they were holding land, so we used a land value and a land and water conservation grant. Okay, so we had to come up with some capital. That was done at Bluegrass, and hopefully we'll do this, Monty referenced up there at the trails now. It used to be called Hawk's Nest.
Gotcha.
The developer still has the dirt. He was gonna, when they get into phase 5, is at about the time when that stuff's gonna get transferred, that land is gonna get transferred to us. I'm gonna suggest that we give that to the Parks Foundation, so the money's not in our name. We can leverage that dirt to get another grant as a matching grant to get that built, and we can probably get that built for a couple $1 million, maybe 1.5 maybe, depending on how, again, it's a smaller neighborhood park, as Monty illustrated. Those are a little less to build
Gotcha.
than a
Let me
large
take you
neighborhood,
back
than
to
a community park.
Coeur d'Alene Place. So Coeur d'Alene Place is 20 years old, maybe a little older. It takes that long to build that place, and it was changing all the time.
And that developer was really, really generous in helping out with that. And
Okay.
they did something that was new for us at the time, the way they developed their subdivision with all the green spaces and trails. They were very innovative in their thinking. And so they helped us out a bunch with that park as well, by giving us the land. And I think they even helped financially build some of that, because they had some in-kind folks that were doing some work that they helped with that park.
Seem to remember that concept was houses facing a park rather than not facing a park. Park is where you went.
Well, yeah, that proximate principle where you're closer to the park and the real estate value is higher as the closer you are to the park. And what the idea was, they were supposed to build the smaller homes closer to the park. They would get more bang for their buck, and as they move further out, the homes would get larger. And that was the idea, just showing that frontage next to a park does increase the value of the ones within close proximity. But the overall neighborhood has a great benefit to it as well.
On those, they have those green belts.
Yeah.
Now, are we taking care of those green
No,
belts?
those are set up, part of their subdivision, homeowners association. So we don't maintain all that stuff in there. It's just the park itself.
Nice, thanks.
Mayor.
Memories.
I'm not gonna let this go. So you have the developer, they come in, and they typically take the crappiest property and give it to us as a park. I mean, it's kind of like the last thing, the last property. It's like, here's a weird-ass shape, we're gonna go ahead and make it a park.
That happened to us
Johnson Park,
once.
love Johnson Park.
Yeah.
They couldn't build any homes on that land, that's why they made it a park. Great park. Landings Park didn't frickin' happen until Doug Eastwood got 120 people in T-shirts to show up at a council meeting and demand a park.
Right.
We need to be more diligent in getting these developers to pay for the parks, put in the parks, put in a bathroom, because it comes on our shoulders. And then the public who sees this crappy piece of dirt looks to us and say, well, why aren't you building a park? Well, I'm saying, why isn't the damn developer building the park?
We had, I'll use one example, where the dirt wasn't the greatest. Eastwood was involved in that too. And at Sunshine Meadows, the developer gave us a parcel. And unfortunately, the part that was difficult was, like you're suggesting, they give us something as an afterthought. And so consequently, the roads were in, the curbs were in, the gutters were in, and we really had to work within those confines. And it was a little more difficult. Nonetheless, we still got a park at that location. But you're absolutely right. I'm really hopeful at Hawk's Nest. They haven't done anything inside, right? It doesn't have a road around it. It doesn't have curbs. So it's a little bit more malleable. We can work with that and get a lot more creative. And so, yeah, there were some mistakes made in the past, and I agree with you. I think if we could hold those developers more accountable, and maybe the error of my ways is when it comes forward is to demonstrate the great value a park does have. for those developers. And it would, the real problem here, Councilman, is this. They don't really need the park as a developer, because as you talked about growth earlier, people are coming here because we're Coeur d'Alene. Parks are nice. We've got great parks. But the reality is, you tell them they're going to spend $3 million so they can sell homes, they're selling homes anyway. So we have to show them the need for it, and so that they would participate in that. And some of that is through impact fees and some other things where they get a break, and then they can do the public some good there.
The need could be up here. I mean, I would say that the definition of sprawl is an absence of parks. And all we got to have, we make the rules. All you got to have is will up here to demand that we do this, and it'll happen. But right now, we cave to the developers. They get whatever they want. I mean, we did on Ramsey. They put in that thing, the nearest park is north of there by, God, I don't know how many feet. So all the kids who live in that neighborhood have to walk to a park. They have to walk through the neighborhood to get to the park. We could have put in a small park.
Well, I have
like
to
this
commend
plan.
all you guys, though, because I hear what you're saying, but I think everybody here at this table and years past, as demonstrated by the parks we have, done a pretty darn good job. Can we always do better?
More acres.
You betcha. But I really think, here at this council and everybody previously has done a tremendous job, because you yourself know we've got a great park system.
Yeah.
And can we have them ante up a little more? Hopefully.
Well, that's what the plan says to me.
Yeah,
The plan
right.
says, let's do it.
Right, yeah, I agree with you.
Thanks. Amy?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I said this before at General Services, and I just want to say it again. It was so rewarding to read through the accomplishments and all that you've done, Bill and Monty and the Parks and Rec team, so thank you. And thank you for a great master plan. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 21-011, approving the adoption of the 2021 Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Further discussion.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kiki.
I just wanted to add the comments and ask if you were going to include an amendment or something to include the natural open space request and to document that as part of the plan, since that's what the public had asked for.
Yes.
So do we need to amend the motion, or is that okay just for discussion and clarification on my part?
I think it'll be in the plan. I don't think you need an amendment. That's just.
Okay.
So just for clarity, so are you asking to add the open space into the level of service, or are you asking it to be identified? It's
Identified,
Okay, cool.
documented
Yeah,
within the plan.
Just so I understand,
And
thank you.
yeah, I wanted it to correlate to what the public's comments were in their.
We've got all
their
of those
response to
parks
that.
listed, and it does show those acreages, but you want to see it as a more pronounced way that it's
A piece.
identified, I think.
Because we could do a separate category for level of service on natural open space. Do some research and see what they're doing across the country for that.
I think that makes sense. That's what the public's asking for, and so, and it is part of what you need to
And in
maintain.
the level of service part that's exactly what we've mirrored. It is nationally, they normally do it on developed parks, but Monty's correct. We can show and demonstrate what you're asking for in a separate way.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Chrissy?
Mr. Mayor, just to kind of chime in on the last conversation, I think certainly, Dan, you have some good ideas that we can do a lot when we approve a subdivision or work with a developer, so I'm all for that. But I would also push back a little bit that there haven't been some great parks done. I don't know that every piece is a crappy piece of dirt, Dan. I think we've got some great parks. But should we do more? Sure, we could look at changing the ordinance, like you've suggested. Maybe we should ask for, to be a larger percentage that they have to contribute to. And then the examples that were given between Coeur d'Alene Place, which is a shining star, and then you said Sunshine Meadows, which we didn't get everything we wanted. So I think we're learning as we go. But I'm new to the council, but having been a city employee for a long time, I think we have some great parks. So I wouldn't want to characterize, Dan, that they're all the worst pieces of property. But I think that you're on the right track, that we try to, going forward, make some real good demands.
Mr. Mayor, if I could clarify, they're not bad parks. I'm not saying they're bad parks. I'm just saying that the developer, when they say, oh, you know, according to the PUD, we have to have 1 acre of parks, it's not the best acre.
And what we typically do is we'll take a master plan like this, where we have identified loosely the area where it could go. When a subdivision comes in for annexation or a PUD, we can point to that and say, in addition to your, I don't know if it's in addition, that'd be a question for Hillary, but in addition to your 10% open space, we need a park in this area. And that's typically when they give us the land, but there isn't anything in place to have them build it, other than impact fees.
And I would say that in the last 20 years, the city of Coeur d'Alene has done a fantastic job of adding park space. I would say if you go back, if you look at older subdivisions that were built in the 60s, in the 70s, and if you ask, okay, this subdivision here that was built in the 60s, how much park space did you add? Well, none, right? 70s, none. So we've had to play a lot of catch up. And we have caught up, and we're continuing to do it. And so last 20 years have been fantastic, and it's a big credit to Doug Eastwood, to Steve Anthony, to Bill, and to the staff, and councils too. Councils have done a great job pushing that. So I think we're in good shape with parks. We can always do better, and I appreciate all the time and effort put into this plan. It's a great plan. So, any other discussion? Okay, Renata, would you like to do a roll call?
Absolutely. English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller? Aye. McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
Motion carried. Thank you, Bill and
Yes.
Ron. So, public hearing, this is a legislative hearing on the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan for Plan Year 2021, and Chelsea is here. This is a public hearing, so there'll be a chance for public comment. So, Chelsea, take it away.
Oh, he's got me. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I am just here to present the 2021 Annual Action Plan, the draft for approval. So we'll go through a little background, the citizen participation process, the needs identified by the community, and the budget, and then have a opportunity for any more public comment. So a little history, the city's CDBG grant is a grant from HUD, and it is to support the low to moderate income residents of Coeur d'Alene through specific activities allowable through HUD. And the city first became eligible to receive CDBG funds in 2007, and today we are just presenting for approval of the city's 2021 draft plan. So LMI just means low to moderate income, and HUD designates that as households whose total earnings are based on 30, 50, and 80% of the yearly median income. And for 2020, Kootenai County's median income for a household of 4 was $70,400. So the way we select activities every year, they have to meet a national objective, be beneficial to low and moderate income residents. They can aid in the prevention of slum and blight, meet an urgent need, and they need to be a HUD-approved activity. They have to meet the annual action plan and the consolidated plan goals, and we have to consider the capacity of our staff, the amount of the allocation that we get, and then the ability of our sub-recipients to carry out the activity. So CDBG funds can be used for activities. This is just a little list. It's not a full list, but these are some of the things that it can be used for. Acquisition of real property, relocation and demolition, rehab of residential and non-residential structures, construction of public facilities and improvements to those facilities. One example would be the HVAC system that we did for St. Vincent's. Public services, activities relating to energy conservation and renewable energy, and then economic development and job creation activities. So that's just some of the things that we can use the money for. So our consolidated plan goals, we have 6 of them for 2018 through 2022. Increasing the supply of for sale and rental housing, for affordable housing for our low-income renters and moderate to low-income workers. And then improving the city sidewalks to make them more accessible for people with disabilities. And then continuing with neighborhood revitalization efforts to improve the condition of housing in low-income areas. Number 5, expanding higher employment opportunities through economic development, and then public service assistance for organizations that support our low and moderate income residents. So our citizen participation for the annual action plan for 2021, we did a public forum on the 6th of January. We did a community survey that we posted to our website and to social media, and then we sent it out to our stakeholders. So we have 189 people on that list. And so we got 82 responses through the survey, and kind of just support for continuing the past projects we have. And then there's a few needs identified that are not new, but high priority. So here's part of that survey. So affordable housing, rental and for sale is a pretty high need. And then, so these are all projects that we're already working on and ongoing. So neighborhood revitalization, the sidewalk accessibility, and then economic development and public service. And then in the other category, we had a few comments that came up. So one was affordable childcare, which we've kind of gone over with COVID. We've seen more of a need for that. And then utility assistance. So we have a utility assistance program in place through the city that's COVID specific, but we don't have an overall program for that. And then the affordable housing again. And then Frances Huffman from TESH, she talked to us about the need for transportation services for disabled people that are employed and getting to work and to and from work, cost-wise and accessibility-wise. So those were the public comments that we got up until today. So again, the main needs are affordable housing, the sidewalks. One of the other new needs that we've seen is the mental health support, and that's become a pretty big increase due to COVID-19, and the affordable child care as well for that. So our funding is based on 2020. We received $339,375. We don't know yet what the exact amount is going to be for 2021. We probably won't know till the middle of April what the exact amount was, but this is just based on last year's funding. So you can see the amounts for the funding and then the percentage next to them. So when we get the final numbers, we'll adjust it based on the percentage as well. And then the only thing changing for this year is we're going to ask that the Meals on Wheels program be expanded and doubled from $5,000 to $10,000.
Thank you.
So here's the comparison from 2020 to 2021. So the only change is the Meals on Wheels, which then reduces the community opportunity grant amount. So, questions?
Questions for Chelsea and Woody?
Chelsea, I'm not sure if you have the answers to this one. Maybe Hillary's here. The affordable housing, can we talk a little about what that is and how? I don't remember us ever being able to do anything. I think we did some rental progress once on an apartment building, but that seems like out of reach. Is it? Trying to picture how that works.
It's not totally out of reach, and the 2020 funds, we got a grant request for Habitat for Humanity. And so they're asking for money to help with the planning process for a project that they're doing. So to help with it, but it wouldn't fund the entire project or anything, but it would help get that project done.
So it's not necessarily putting people in it, it's getting the product out there.
And having it accessible. And then another program might be rental assistance or something like that, but we don't have, our allocation isn't real big, so it's hard to make a big impact, so.
Probably quite a few hoops to jump through also, wouldn't it be?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Woody, on that issue, as far as affordable housing, that's going to have to come at the federal level, because, the amount of dollars that they have it just can't make a significant impact. They can help smaller projects like Habitat for Humanity or some of those others, which would reach a few people, but this is a wider problem than that.
Yeah, their project, I think they have 2 of them that they're working on, and one is 6 units, I think, and one is 20. So it's not a lot, but it's something.
Can they leverage CDBG grant money into further grant money? Can they use that as matching if they have another grant that they need X amount worth of matching? Do you know, can they use a CDBG
I would think
grant?
so, but I'm not sure exactly how that works.
So that could help them increase what they could get as far as grants go.
We do say the NRAP program keeps people in their homes, right?
Yeah, so that helps keep affordable housing in the pool of affordable housing too, and keeps it from being dilapidated.
Yeah. Dan, and then I'll come back to you, Kristen.
Well, just to say, yes, especially with Habitats, they've changed some of their housing business model, and actually they were able to get our old well site up there, and one of the things they're doing, and they've recognized that, Habitat houses, which, folks, these little tiny houses on tiny lots, but, affordable housing, but now with the demand here has been so high that even an old little Habitat house was getting out of the affordable housing pool. So what they're doing, and what you see up there, is a combination of kind of combined units, more like a little mini townhouse, and where they, so for down the road, it's going to make more housing units now, and down the road, they're doing things to deliberately keep them in that pool. So, that's a great way to go, and hopefully there'll be some others. But, 20 for them, I mean, that's a significant project, so that's good to hear.
And it's a community land trust, so it keeps it affordable long term.
Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, maybe members of council have had a presentation. Do we know what is the dollar amount in our community that's considered affordable housing? And when Dan just mentioned, I saw something sell the other day for less than 1,000 square feet, and it was over $400,000, and it was small and old, and I thought, well, that's just terrible. So what is that dollar amount, and not just for homes, but for rent, that we should shoot for?
It's based upon your income, so it's 30% of your income. If you pay more than 30% of your income for housing, you're considered to be challenged.
Well, you won't qualify for a loan.
Yeah, and so
mortgage.
for example, rent. If you make $2,000 a month, affordable housing would be $600 or less, and we know how difficult that is to find. So that's really the level. It's 30% of your income. If you pay more than 30% of your income for housing, you're considered to be housing challenged. And so that's the target. So we probably have to find out what our average income is in Coeur d'Alene, times it by 30%, and then come up with that figure. But that obviously is a huge issue.
Well, we keep talking about affordable housing, just kind of on the peripheral, because I don't know that any of us know exactly what we can do to impact that as a city. And I don't know if there's some creative programs in other cities, but I don't see at this rate, even with rents in apartment buildings, how there will ever be this affordability. So
Best thing that we can do and I know I could get Dan to agree to this, is to create better paying jobs so people can afford
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And so that really, I believe, falls under North Idaho College to train the people to
I
go out
agree.
there and to get better jobs. So it is a problem. Education, job training, job recruiting, those kind of things are a huge part of that. Let's help these people earn more so they can afford the housing. When you have, it's a double-edged sword, when you have created such a great place to live and people want to be here, and we do a good job of doing all the things that a city is supposed to do, then the demand for that housing, and it's economics 101, the law of supply and demand raises those prices. So there's a lot of pieces to solving that puzzle, but job creation and wages is huge.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of that.
Thank you.
So NIC did submit a grant proposal for economic development
There you
project
go.
too, so
Yeah.
we'll be looking at that.
Yeah. Kiki, did you have something?
Just two things. Christy, were you going down the road of wanting to know what the inventory of like subsidized housing is when you first said that, when you said affordable, what is our affordable housing capacity? I think that's a conversation that has come up in meetings. How many, the wait list for a subsidized apartment complex can be a year and a half or 2 years out.
That's great information. I didn't
So
have
that's those things. I think the Association of Realtors has some of that data that says there's this many people who want, they can't afford more than $600 a month, and there's this many units that could be available at that rate, and it's a pretty large disparity, which wasn't my question. My question was, there was an item up there called, under the new needs, that was called emergency housing funding. Is that something that is funds that are paid to other organizations, or is that a rent subsidy, or what is the new need for emergency housing funding?
It could be both, or transitional housing, and with the COVID and people losing jobs and moving around a little bit more, or one of them is the domestic violence issue, so they end up needing emergency housing, family housing. So different organizations handle and kind of caseload those, so that's part of that.
And so
But
that's
it's been
carrying into
it's
the
kind
new,
of an increased
the new
need.
budget
Yeah.
is what that is. Okay, thanks.
Or just something to be aware of, that it's a need.
Any other questions for Chelsea? So if there are no other questions, I will open the public testimony portion of this. I don't have anyone on the list. Renata, is there anyone out in Zoom?
We still have 3 attendees out in Zoom. If any of you would like to testify on this matter, do so by raising your hand now.
The virtual raising the hand, we couldn't.
Yeah.
We can't see that, yeah. Mhm.
Through the Zoom tool app, for sure. I see no hand raising, Mayor.
Okay, so we will close the public testimony portion of that and look for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan for the plan year, is that 2020 or 2021?
2021.
2021.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? The one thing that I would like to add is that when Ron Edinger retired, I had to substitute someone in, and we all know that Ron was a big advocate for the Meals on Wheels program, right? And so I'm very happy that Woody is such a big advocate, and he's been great at Lake City Senior Center, done a wonderful job, and that's really
Thanks for the
important.
support, too.
Yeah.
You've been very helpful.
The only thing I've noticed is that we have to kind of twist his arm to, Woody, we need more money for Meals on Wheels. And I'm glad to hear he's letting it happen tonight. So.
You guys know my weak spots, don't you?
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hillary.
To adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Steve.